Officer. Hebrews, the prisoner Samson here I seek. His manacles remark him. There he sits. Samson. To thee, our lords, thus bid me say, this day to Dagon is a solemn feast, with sacrifices, triumph, pomp, and games, thy strength they know, surpassing human rate. And now some public proof thereof required, to honour this great feast and great assembly. Rise, therefore, with all speed, and come along, where I will see thee heartened and fresh glad, to appear as fits before the illustrious lords. Thou knowest I am an Hebrew, therefore tell them, our law forbids at their religious rites my presence, for that cause I cannot come. This answer, be assured, will not content them. Have they not sword players and every sort of gymnic artists, wrestlers, riders, runners, jugglers, and dancers, antics, mummers, mimics? But they must pick me out with shackles tired and over-labored at their public mill to make them sport with blind activity. Do they not seek occasion of new quarrels on my refusal to distress me more, or make a game of my calamities? Return the way thou camest, I will not come. Regard thyself, this will offend them highly. Myself, my conscience and internal peace. Can they think me so broken, so debased with corporal servitude, that my mind ever will condescend to such absurd commands, although their drudge, to be their fool or jester, and in my midst of sorrow and heart grief, to show them feats and play before their God, the worst of all indignities, yet on me joined with extreme contempt I will not come. My message was imposed on me with speed, brooks no delay. Is this thy resolution? So take it with what speed thy message needs. I am sorry what this stoutness will produce. Perhaps thou shalt have cause to sorrow indeed. Consider, Samson, matters now are strained. Up to the height, whether to hold or break, he's gone, and who knows how he may report thy words by adding fuel to the flame. Expect another message more imperious, more lordly thundering than thou wilt bear. Shall I abuse this consecrated gift of strength, again returning with my hair after my great transgression, so requite favor renewed, and add a greater sin, by prostituting holy things to idols, a Nazarite in place abominable, vaunting my strength in honor to their Dagon? Besides, how vile, contemptible, ridiculous, what act more execrably unclean, profane? Yet with this strength thou servest the Philistines, idolatrous, uncircumcised, unclean, not in their idol worship, but by my labor, honest and lawful to deserve my food, of those who have me in their civil power. Where the heart joins not, outward acts defile not. Where outward force constrains, the sentence holds. But who constrains me to the temple of Dagon? Not dragging. The Philistine lords command. Commands are no constraints. If I obey them, I do it freely, venturing to displease God for the fear of man, and man prefer, set God behind, which in his jealousy shall never unrepentant find forgiveness. Yet this he may dispense with me, or thee, present in temples at idolatrous rites, for some important cause thou needst no doubt. How thou wilt here come off surmounts my reach. Be of good courage. I begin to feel some rousing motions in me, which dispose to something extraordinary my thoughts. I with this messenger will go along. Nothing to do, be sure, that may dishonor our law or stain my vow of Nazarite. If there be aught of presage in the mind, this day will be remarkable in my life, by some great act, or of my days the last. In time thou hast resolved, the man returns. Samson, this second message from our lords to thee I am bid say, art thou our slave, our captive, at the public mill our drudge, and darest thou, at our sending and command, dispute thy coming? Come without delay, or we shall find such engines to assail and hamper thee, as thou shalt come of force, though thou wert firmlier fastened than a rock. I could be well content to try their art, which to no few of them would prove pernicious, yet knowing their advantages too many, because they shall not trail me through their streets like a wild beast, I am content to go. Master's commands come with a power resistless, to such as owe them absolute subjection. And for a life, who will not change his purpose? So mutable are all the ways of men. Yet this be sure, in nothing to comply scandalous or forbidden in our law. I praise thy resolution. Doff these links. By this compliance thou wilt win the lords to favor, and perhaps to set thee free. Brethren, farewell. Your company along I will not wish, lest it perhaps offend them to see me girt with friends, and how the sight of me as of a common enemy, so dreaded once, may now exasperate them I know not. Lords are lordliest in their wine, and the well-feasted priest then soonest fired with zeal if aught religion seem concerned, nor less the people on their holy days impetuous, insolent, unquenchable. Happen what may, of me expect to hear nothing dishonorable, impure, unworthy. Our God, our law, my nation, or myself, the last of me or no I cannot warrant. Go, and the Holy One of Israel be thy guide, to what may serve his glory best and spread his name, great among the heathen round. Send thee the angel of thy birth to stand fast by thy side, who from thy father's field rode up in flames, after his message told of thy conception, and be now a shield of fire. That spirit that first rushed on thee in the camp of Dan, be efficacious in thee now at need, for never was from heaven imparted measure of strength so great to mortal seed, as in thy wondrous actions hath been seen. But wherefore comes old Manoah in such haste, with youthful steps, much livelier than erewhile he seems, supposing here to find his son, or of him bringing to us some glad news? Peace with you, brethren. My inducement hither was not at present here to find my son, by order of the lords new parted hence, to come and play before them at their feast. I heard all as I came. The city rings, and numbers thither flock. I had no will lest I should see him forced to things unseemly. But that which moved my coming now was chiefly to give ye part with me what hope I have, with good success to work his liberty. That hope would much rejoice us to partake with thee. Say, reverend sire, we thirst to hear. I have attempted one by one the lords, either at home or through the high street passing, with supplication prone and father's tears, to accept of ransom for my son, their prisoner. Some much averse I found, and wondrous harsh, contemptuous, proud, set on revenge and spite, that part most reverence Dagon and his priest. Others more moderate seeming, but their aim private reward, for which both God and state they easily would set to sale. A third, more generous far and civil, who confessed they had enough revenged, having reduced their foe to misery beneath their fears. The rest was magnanimity to remit. If some convenient ransom were proposed, what noise or shout was that? It tore the sky. Doubtless, the people shouting to behold their once great dread captive and blind before them, or at some proof of strength before them shone. His ransom, if my whole inheritance may compass it, shall willingly be paid, and numbered down. Much rather I shall choose to live the poorest in my tribe than richest, and he in that calamitous prison left. No, I am fixed not to part hence without him. For his redemption, all my patrimony, if need be, I am ready to forego and quit. Not wanting him, I shall want nothing. Fathers are wont to lay up for their sons. Thou for thy son art bent to lay out all. Sons wont to nurse their parents in old age. Thou in old age carest how to nurse thy son, made older than thy age through eyesight lost. It shall be my delight to tend his eyes, and view him sitting in the house ennobled, with all those high exploits by him achieved, and on his shoulders waving down those locks that of a nation armed the strength contained. And I persuade me God had not permitted his strength again to grow up with his hair, garrisoned round about him like a camp, of faithful soldiery. Were not his purpose to use him further yet in some great service, not to sit idle with so great a gift, useless and thence ridiculous about him? And since his strength with eyesight was not lost, God will restore him eyesight to his strength. Thy hopes are not ill-founded, nor seem vain of his delivery, and thy joy thereon conceived agreeable to a father's love, in both which we as next participate. I know your friendly minds, and oh, what noise! Mercy of heaven, what hideous noise was that? Horribly loud, unlike the former shout. Noise call you it, or universal groan, as if the whole inhabitation perished. Blood, death, and deathful deeds are in that noise. Ruin, destruction at the utmost point. Of ruin indeed methought I heard the noise. Oh, it continues. They have slain my son. Thy son is rather slaying them, that outcry from slaughter of one foe could not ascend. Some dismal accident it needs must be. What shall we do? Stay here or run and see? Best keep together here, lest running thither we unawares run into danger's mouth. This evil on the Philistines is fallen, from whom could else a general cry be heard? The sufferers then will scarce molest us here. From other hands we need not much to fear. What if his eyesight, for to Israel's God nothing is hard, by miracle restored, he now be dealing dole among his foes, and over heaps of slaughtered walk his way? That were a joy presumptuous to be thought. Yet God hath wrought things as incredible for his people of old. What hinders now? He can, I know, but doubt to think he will. Yet hope would fain subscribe, and tempts belief. A little stay will bring some notice hither. Of good or bad so great, of bad the sooner, for evil news rides post, while good news baits. And to our wish I see one hither speeding, in Hebrew as I guess, and of our tribe. Oh, whither shall I run? Or which way fly? The sight of this so horrid spectacle, which erst my eyes beheld and yet behold, for dire imagination still pursues me, but providence or instinct of nature seems, or reason though disturbed, and scarce consulted, to have guided me aright, I know not how, to thee first reverend Manoah, and to these my countrymen, whom here I knew remaining, as at some distance from the place of horror, so in the sad event too much concerned. The accident was loud, and here before thee with rueful cry, yet what it was, we hear not, no preface needs, thou seest we long to know. It would burst forth, but I recover breath, and sense distract, to know well what I utter. Tell us the sum, the circumstance defer. Gaza yet stands, but all her sons are fallen, all in a moment overwhelmed and fallen. Sad, but thou knowest to Israelites not saddest the desolation of a hostile city. Feed on that first, there may in grief be surfeit. Relate by whom? By Samson. That still lessens the sorrow, and converts it nigh to joy. Ah, Manoah, I refrain too suddenly, to utter what will come at last too soon, lest evil tidings with too rude irruption, hitting thy aged ear, should pierce too deep. Suspense in news is torture, speak them out. Then take the worst in brief. Samson is dead. The worst indeed. O, all my hopes defeated to free him hence. But death, who sets all free, hath paid his ransom now, and full discharge. What windy joy this day had I conceived, hopeful of his delivery, which now proves abortive as the firstborn bloom of spring, nipped with the lagging rear of winter's frost. Yet ere I give the reins to grief, say first, how died he? Death to life is crown or shame. All by him fell, thou sayest. By whom fell he? What glorious hand gave Samson his death's wound? Unwounded of his enemies he fell. Wearied with slaughter then, or how? Explain. By his own hands. Self-violence. What cause brought him so soon at variance with himself among his foes? Inevitable cause, at once both to destroy and be destroyed, the edifice where all were met to see him, upon their heads, and on his own he pulled. O lastly overstrong against thyself, a dreadful way thou took'st to thy revenge. More than enough we know, but while things yet are in confusion, give us, if thou canst, eye-witness of what first or last was done, relation more particular and distinct. Occasions drew me early to this city, and as the gates I entered with sunrise, the morning trumpet's festival proclaimed. Through each high street little I had dispatched, when all abroad was rumored that this day Samson should be brought forth to show the people proof of his mighty strength in feats and games. I sorrowed at his captive state, but minded not to be absent at that spectacle. The building was a spacious theatre, half round, on two main pillars vaulted high, with seats, where all the lords and each degree of sort might sit in order to behold. The other side was open, where the throng on banks and scaffolds under sky might stand. I among these aloof obscurely stood. The feast and noon grew high, and sacrifice had filled their hearts with mirth, high cheer, and wine, when to their sports they turned. Immediately was Samson as a public servant brought, in their state livery clad. Before him pipes and timbrels, on each side went armed guards, both horse and foot before him and behind, archers and slingers, cataphracts and spears. At sight of him the people with a shout rifted the air, clamoring their God with praise, who had made their dreadful enemy their thrall. He, patient but undaunted, where they led him, came to the place, and what was set before him, which without help of eye might be essayed, to heave, pull, draw, or break, he still performed, all with incredible, stupendous force, none daring to appear antagonist. At length, for intermission's sake, they led him between the pillars. He his guide requested, for so from such as nearer stood we heard, as overtired to let him lean a while both his arms on those two massy pillars that to the arched roof gave main support. He unsuspicious led him, which when Samson felt in his arms, with head a while inclined, and eyes fast fixed, he stood, as one who prayed, where some great matter in his mind revolved. At last, with head erect, thus cried aloud, Hitherto, lords, what your commands imposed I have performed, as reason was, obeying. Not without wonder or delight beheld. Now of my own accord such other trial I mean to show you of my strength, yet greater, as with amaze shall strike all who behold. This uttered, straining all his nerves, he bowed, as with the force of winds and waters pent, when mountains tremble, those two massy pillars with horrible convulsion to and fro. He tugged, he shook, till down they came and drew the whole roof after them, with burst of thunder upon the heads of all who sat beneath, lords, ladies, captains, counselors, or priests, their choice nobility and flower, not only of this, but each Philistine city round, met from all parts to solemnize this feast. Samson with these immixed inevitably, pulled down the same destruction on himself. The vulgar only scaped who stood without. O dearly bought revenge, yet glorious, living or dying, thou hast fulfilled the work for which thou wast foretold to Israel, and now liest victorious among the slain, self-killed, not willingly, but tangled in the fold of dire necessity, whose law in death conjoined thee with thy slaughtered foes in number more than all thy life had slain before. While their hearts were jocund and sublime, drunk with idolatry, drunk with wine, and fat regorged of bulls and goats, chanting their idol and preferring, before our living dread who dwells in Silo his bright sanctuary. Among them he a spirit of frenzy sent, who hurt their minds, and urged them on with mad desire to call in haste for their destroyer. They only set on sport and play, unwittingly importuned their own destruction to come speedy upon them. So fond are mortal men, fallen into wrath divine, as their own ruin on themselves to invite, insensate left, or to sense reprobate, and with blindness eternal struck. But he, though blind of sight, despised, and thought extinguished quite, with inward eyes illuminated, his fiery virtue roused, from under ashes into sudden flame, and as an evening dragon came, assailant on the perched roosts, and nests in order ranged, of tame volatic fowl, but as an eagle his cloudless thunder bolted on their heads, so virtue given for lost, depressed and overthrown as seemed, like that self-begotten bird in the Arabian woods embossed, that no second knows nor third, and lay erewhile a holocaust. From out her ashy womb now teemed, revives, reflourishes, then vigorous most, when most unactive deemed. And though her body die, her fame survives, a secular bird ages of lives. Come, come, no time for lamentation now, nor much more cause. Samson hath quit himself like Samson, and heroically hath finished a life heroic on his enemies. Fully revenged, hath left them years of mourning and lamentation to the sons of Captor. Though all Philistine bounds, to Israel honor hath left and freedom, let but them find courage to lay hold on this occasion, to himself and father's house in eternal fame. And which is best and happiest yet, all this with God not parted from him, as was feared, but favoring and assisting to the end. Nothing is here for tears, nothing to wail, or knock the breast, no weakness, no contempt, dispraise or blame, nothing but well and fair, and what may quiet us in a death so noble. Let us go find the body where it lies, soaked in his enemy's blood, and from the stream, with lavers pure and cleansing herbs, wash off the clotted gore. I with what speed the while, Gaza is not in plight to say us nay, will send for all my kindred, all my friends, to fetch him hence and solemnly attend, with silent obsequy and funeral train, home to his father's house. There will I build him a monument, and plant it round with shade of laurel evergreen and branching palm, with all his trophies hung, and acts enrolled in copious legend or sweet lyric song. Thither shall all the valiant youth resort, and from his memory inflame their breasts to matchless valor and adventures high. The virgins also shall on feastful days visit his tomb with flowers, only bewailing his lot unfortunate in nuptial choice. from whence captivity and loss of eyes. All is best, though we oft doubt what the unsearchable dispose of highest wisdom brings about, and ever best found in the close. Oft he seems to hide his face, but unexpectedly returns, and to his faithful champion has in place bore witness gloriously, whence Gaza mourns, and all that band them to resist his uncontrollable intent. His servants he with new acquist of true experience from this great event, with peace and consolation hath dismissed, and calm of mind all passion spent.